at some point in there, I felt uh, pretty good, and like I'm sailing and back to focus in student ministry. Is one of the hardest things in healing and leading is that I didn't feel like I was giving my best to the students. But what I found, as they were telling me later, is no, actually, we saw you wrestling through stuff and still living out your faith. And that was the most powerful thing that we could have seen that whole time.
Welcome to A Theology of Hustle. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, and follow me at Theology of Hustle on Instagram. Now, let's get to work. Mark Shoemaker, my man, it is so good to see you. It's been way too long.
Oh my goodness, man. I'm talking with Currey. It has been too long, man. I miss you, dude.
I miss you too. I know. With our move and all that stuff, it just, it's just not the same. So it's good to connect this way at least. So
absolutely.
Let's kick off and just maybe have you introduce yourself to everybody a little bit. Can you give us a little of the quick bio?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Mark Shoemaker, and I've been doing youth ministry. That's kind of been my world for a long time. Student ministry. Was a youth pastor for like 11 years at a church in the city. Chicago's where I'm from, and now I'm doing NextGen pastor, kids through college ministry at another church, and married my high school sweetheart. And I always tell my students, I'm like, guys, it doesn't normally work out like that. Okay, this isn't like the goal. Okay, like y'all probably shouldn't be dating, but it worked out okay for me, and worked out great for me actually. She's awesome. Her name is Sarah. We got 3 kids, ranging from 3 years old up to 12. So,
yeah, that's you're in the thick of it for sure. And
yeah, it's sort of an interesting time. There's like moments that I'm, talking about middle school stuff with one, and then, potty training with another one,
Yeah.
So it's like, it's all the things, man.
Yeah, I very much. I very much understand that. That's great stuff. And all at the age of 25. I can't believe how much you've accomplished at the age of 25. Dude, it's amazing.
I had a guy come up to me last Sunday. I preached at our church, and he's like, I have never seen such a young pastor preaching. I was like, I got to ask, how old do you think I am? He's dead serious, man. It's his first Sunday there. He's like, 18, 19. And I was like, okay, listen, I'm all for getting mistaken as having a baby face. Like, I'm all for that. Whatever. I'll embrace looking younger. But if you peg me as an 18-year-old, now I want to be older than that. Okay. I want to look younger, but not that young, please.
Yeah, you did back in our youth ministry days. You did get mistaken for one of the students quite frequently.
It did. Yeah, it happened. I remember parents showing up, and they would talk to this one student that looked older. They thought he was the guy in charge. Depending on what was happening, I let him take that.
Yeah, no, it's good. He could just roll with it. It's fine.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just
okay
answer all
that.
the questions,
Yeah.
That's a good call. That's smart. I love that. Okay, so let's walk through a little bit of your just vocational journey. I mean, we have some of these stepping stones together actually, so it'll be fun to kind of like weave everything together. But how did you decide that youth ministry was kind of your thing?
Yeah, I remember I was in high school, and there was a specific night actually. Our small group leader was out sick or something like that. He asked me to step in and lead the small group, and I'd hacked my way through leading worship that night with the student band. And then afterwards, one of my friends was having girl troubles, and he was asking me about that, which I'm sure I gave him amazing advice, as a 17-year-old or whatever I was. And I was packing up my guitar, walked out the back of the church, walking around the side of the building. I remember thinking like, man, I love tonight. Like there was something about it that felt like it really mattered, and that I really genuinely enjoyed. And then it hit me somewhere in that walk to the car. I think that's what a pastor does. I think they do these kinds of things. They hack their way through worship and sort of talk about this stuff. So obviously I had so much to learn about what ministry was, but it was in that moment that I started paying attention to that as a God thing. is putting that on my heart, and started talking to other people about it. And um, I went to Moody Bible Institute. I never did a college visit. I hear about students now doing all these college visits. I
Yep.
didn't know, man. I knew it was in the city. That's what I knew.
Well, if you're in Chicago and want to do ministry, there's like only one place to go,
That's all you
basically,
hear
right?
about. I
Yeah.
know. Now
Yeah.
I'm older and I'm like, man, there's like so many great colleges and other destinations. But yeah, I showed up on Moody's campus, was a student men guy, um, the whole way through and through. I did seminary after that at Moody and did my MDiv, but even that was with the emphasis of student ministry. I was like, I really think if I'm going to teach well to high school students and challenge, especially the ones that grew up in church, I felt like I needed to be able to go deeper, not necessarily nerdy deep, but to be able to myself dive into that and then figure out how to bring that to high schoolers in a way that made them love the Bible and realize, wow, this really matters for my life. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to actually I want to talk about that for a second because I've been thinking a little bit about this. In your experience, you've done a lot of student ministry over the years. Do you feel like we don't give students a lot of times enough credit for like the depth at which they can sort of understand scripture and theology?
Totally, man. That's like a little bit of a soapbox that
Okay, love it. I
you
love a
didn't
soapbox.
know that
I
the
love a
next
soapbox.
45 minutes I'm just gonna rant about. Yeah, I think if we would put in some of the thought and the effort into thinking through the intersection of life really that our students are at. These are not lessons that we're and messages that we're trying to give as we think about a future platform that we might be on.
Right.
This is right now. Right now, these students are very aware of the world around them, and the Bible is either going to be a disconnect
Yeah.
for them, or it's going to be something that they see is relevant for here and now. So I'm fully aware they're not going to remember my messages 15 years from now.
Yeah.
They won't. But I hope that they remember that one night when I was going through that one thing, the Bible related to what I was going through that, and it helped me right there. And so I don't think we give enough credit at all. One of my friends here on staff at the church I'm at, um, he does all of our writing and teaching for the church that I'm at. It's called The Bridge, and he all the time thinks about what are like the 10 or 12 things I always need to come back to apply for adults. And he's like, man, students has like their own set of list for that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Like there's a strategy of thinking through its, friendships and dating, of course, but there's discipline and there's self-control and there's all these things of where they're at. So, yeah, and I think if we can go a little bit deeper, they've heard a lot of the stories. If they've grown up in the church, they've heard a lot of the stories. And so we have to be able to put it together for them and maybe even plunge a little bit into the depth of it for them to be like, whoa, there's more there than I thought.
Yeah. So talk to me about that though. What do you mean by kind of go deeper? Because I feel like a lot of youth ministry, and this is valid, it gets stuck in that sort of application scenario, right? It's even, I mean, sort of how we think about preaching a lot of times, like expositional, versus kind of topical or whatever. But I feel like youth ministry so easily a lot of times just gets stuck in sort of topical land, So
Yeah.
what is it that you think that we could go deeper on a lot of times?
Yeah, because I don't think deeper is for students. Let's talk languages, and although there could be a place
Yeah.
for some of that stuff, and I did like book clubs with theology and stuff like that. I think a lot of the depth, it's probably two things. One is seeing how it applies to their life. There's a depth to that.
Mm.
I could hear the most basic thing, but if it applies to something that I'm feeling in very deep ways or seeing in my life or very confused about or very stuck on, that struck deep within me. Even if it's a simple thing, like that goes very deep. Um, So that's the first thing. And the second thing is the Bible. I'm trying to think about how to say this.
Yeah, it's all right. We can always,
I would say this in messages. The Bible is really good. Like, it's really
I
good.
love that. I
It's
love
so
that.
basic, but showing some of how it fits. So sometimes I would just throw little things in there that as you see some of the parables and how they fit together. It's like, oh, there's like purpose in that. Or some of the Old Testament stuff, uh, Passover, and be like, what's so cool about this is that's what Jesus is celebrating with his disciples. And that's actually in Jerusalem where and some of this stuff, Old Testament, is happening. Some of those things haven't been connected yet for middle school, high school, honestly, even for adults.
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
teaching a Bible
Yeah.
class right now for adults, and the goal of it is just to put together the Bible as this one story.
Yep.
And I saw last week as I'm teaching it, this adult goes, "That makes sense. I get it. That and it matters to put it together." So I think some of the depth is connecting the Bible and helping them see the book of Luke. There's a lot that is this and
Yeah.
connected together. And I think as they see that, and that's not like I'm not taking a long time on that. It's just little comments here and there, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Because I think, I know it's a soapbox, so I'm just going to stick with it for a second here.
Sure.
But I think, I mean, we have so much more access to the Bible than any people in any time in all of Christian history, right? Like, how many Bibles are sitting on shelves everywhere? Like, the problem is not having the Bible. In my experience, though, pastorally, we just have what is it? People aren't necessarily always motivated to study scripture for themselves or to dig in. I don't even want to say it's an education problem because I don't know that that's it. It's like a desire problem. What do you know what I'm trying to kind of get
Yes.
at, I guess?
Yes. I don't think I have the solution
Sure.
for it,
Yeah.
but I know what you're talking about. We've made it easier. It's not about it being complicated. I remember putting it out to a group of students one time where I said, I promise you, you have time to read the Bible. And I forget what like bet or wager I put out there, but I said, anyone come to me, I will find time in your day. I promise you, I'll find time in your day that you could read the Bible. And it's not about it being hard yet because anymore because there's apps like you said and amazing resources that bring
Yeah.
it like right down to you. Here's some of what I've been talking to students though about with desire. Um, Desire is cultivated. Um, Take it to exercise and work out, and that's actually, I think it's in Timothy that it's talked about. That comparison of physical training. I don't feel like working out,
Yeah.
but a couple months into it, there is a little bit more of a desire towards it because I've done it. So I actually think if we could be training a little bit in some of the discipline areas of life, I think that plays into it. Same with food. Um, I went to Portillo's the other day, hot dog place here in
Classic.
Chicago.
We have one like 5 minutes from our house, Mark.
Dude,
You
they're
would not
popping
believe it,
up.
dude. In
The
Dallas, it's crazy.
I'm
It's
so
crazy.
happy for you, and the world is a better place with more Portillos.
For sure.
But it's unbelievable. I've been eating better, and then you have that, and all of a sudden, my appetite is stirred back towards that. So I think
Yeah.
a lot of our desire is what we're feeding ourselves.
Hmm.
And so what I'll tell students is to start small. If you start with 5 minutes every day, and you're disciplined in that, do that really well. Wake up 5 minutes earlier. You can do that. Yeah, I can do that. They feel pretty good about that. Then once you start, and I'd probably say 10 minutes, 5 minutes is probably too short, but 10 minutes, have 10 minutes with God. I think what they're going to start to find is that at some point, not the first day, second day, or third day, at some point, they start to enjoy it a little bit more. They have a little bit more of an appetite for it, a little bit more of a desire. And there will be one day where they realize at 10 minutes, they kind of wish they had 5 more minutes. And then that's where I'm like, all right, then you're ready to put that in. And so that's one thing I say
Yeah.
about desire. And the second thing is we oftentimes make it this quiet time that it's like I'm sitting and I am scholarly and I am having a very serious contemplative time with God. And I think it's so much more than that because it's a relationship. I don't hang out with my wife the same way every day. Um, there's all sorts of ways that we enjoy each other. And so I think we have to see that as the same with God. And if students could see that, it's like, hey, put together a great playlist of good songs that are worship songs that's getting your heart, your mind thinking about that. That counts as time with God. I wouldn't only do that, but I think that that counts. And as you start to do the things you enjoy, it cultivates more of a desire and helps put you more on the path to start to do the things that you don't enjoy, but you do enjoy that relationship with God, so you want it deeper. So I don't like fasting. Not many of us do, I don't think.
No.
But I can get to that place if I've been doing some of these other habits that I do enjoy. And it has cultivated more of that desire to the point where I can get to like, I think that'd be good for me. So students, that's the closest I've seen to start to work to build that desire in them.
Yeah, I think that's a good method for everybody. I mean, I think that's great. Yeah, yeah, I really appreciate that. Let's get back to your story though a little bit.
Yeah.
So go to Moody, do grad school, all of that stuff. What happens next?
So I'm at Moody and interning at the church I grew up at. Kind of an interesting setup there and kind of, not kind of, very unique to be interning at that church. And then within that, while I was in seminary, still interning there, and position opens up to do student men. Youth pastor moved into the worship position, and so now I'm doing youth ministry at the church I grew up in, which has all sorts of great parts about it. I know the people, I know the families. Some of the students that I have, their parents were my small group leaders,
Yeah, it's
and just
crazy.
I feel like I'm talking out of the 1950s here, but like my parents were their small group leaders. So like that's where I'm at. Okay. So people, it's truly the example of people like, I remember babysitting you. I was like, I know you're about to say you changed my diaper. I really don't need to hear that. Um, but there's a lot of beauty in that too. People warned me about it, but there was a lot where I felt like people trusted me and I was able to go deep with people. And um, but honestly, man, it was easier.
Yeah.
I was there. I knew it,
Mm.
and I don't like change in my life. And what I didn't know is God was going to use that place as very much of a testing ground to test and grow me uh, in ways that I hadn't had to that point. Everything was very consistent, and grew up in the same church. Now I'm interning. Now I'm on staff, um, and he used that place. There was a whole bunch of things within church that were unhealthy, and leadership that was removed from leadership, and people that were friends of mine, and or family of friends of mine, and all sorts of things that I saw really hard things in ministry with leadership, and personally was affected by that in a variety of ways, and then had to lead, not had to, got to, truly got to lead our people through that as I was healing and they were healing through what it looks like to work through that. And my relationship with God is so much better because of that. And I don't say that flippantly, man. Uh, but there's a reality of knowing how difficult those days were. And I know you were around for some of that and you saw some of
Yeah.
it, and you have been a good friend through a lot of that. And but truly, man, the ways that I experienced God in that time grew me as a person, as a man, as a leader. And so am actually really grateful for how God used that. And I didn't see any of that coming. I kind of thought it was easier because I was there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, I hadn't thought about like how comfortable that would be. I mean, there's uncomfortable parts of it, right? Like you talked about, you've known these people your entire life. And I hadn't thought about that comfort. And you know what? I'll be honest, I don't think we talk enough about the hard parts of doing ministry. Like a lot of what we talk about ministry at, you know, like big church pastors, like mega church pastors come into our minds and we're like, oh, they're abuse, all of this stuff. But we don't talk about what it's like to just kind of like be in that ministry system. Like there's all sorts of staff and like people who are in ministry experience a lot of really hard things. And a lot of times there's just nobody to talk to about it because everybody who you would talk to is like in it, in an elder board
Yeah.
position or a ministry leadership. It's just like it is a very fraught job, like to
Yeah.
have ministry, right?
It is. It's a weird place to be, um, because soon after, the pastor had been removed, um, from ministry, it's kinda like, well, who do you trust in that moment? For me, at least, that's what
Yeah.
I'm asking. But, there's a lot of people looking at me saying, "Well, that's who I trust." Simultaneously saying, "Well, you're a pastor, they were a pastor. Can I trust you?" And to find in all of that, it's like, well, who do I trust? Who do I trust? Um, I I don't know. It's probably not a very good quote from today, so don't pull it from here, anyone, or you can, whatever. But like for a long time, I was like, I don't like pastors, and I don't trust pastors, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure where I'm at, which is ironic because I am one,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
there's a part of me that felt like I had seen enough to be like, man, I don't know about this. But I think I I'm thankful I stuck in it because as much as I didn't feel like I could trust people, what I learned is you could trust God and His authority, and then from that, heal, and then you can, I was able to trust. But it is a weird spot to be leading people through and not sure who you can talk to, which is why our friendship mattered a ton to Sarah and I during those days with you and JJ, because it was someone totally outside of the situation, someone that I could talk to, and you'd be like, "Well, that's messed up," and I'm like, "Thank you. I kind of thought it was too, but uh, I feel a lot better now." And Sarah and I both got connected with great counselors as well that were great in that time for us as well. So um, truly, the healing has been a beautiful thing, and that I know that we're stronger because of it, and hopefully, people in the church are too. That's the hope.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate you being willing to talk about that. Um, yeah, that was a long and difficult season. I know for you, but I do appreciate you just bringing it back. I mean, this is a lot of this stuff, like this modern deconstruction movement we're like seeing go on, evangelicals, all of that stuff comes from a lot of this like stuff, just like the junk of the church, and to sort of like, I don't know, have a testimony where you kind of like trust God through it, I think is an amazing thing. God is still a steady presence, even though the people of the church can let us down a lot of times. So
That's right, man. And I
yeah.
think that it's so much of the story of the Bible and history of us making a mess of our life. And you're in a good spot if you're trusting God. And the thing is I never lost conviction within that time that I was still supposed to be pastoring and leading and doing exactly what I was doing. It just was going to look different because I really felt broken in that season. And it's okay to lead out of that brokenness if you have the right things in place to support you in that time. But um, that wasn't the time to leave or run away. I remember my counselor told me, um, I took a couple, I don't know if it was even a couple weeks, it might have been a week off, when sort of a lot of this stuff imploded. And my counselor's like, you got to get back on the bike, man. The longer you stay off, the more reasons you're going to give yourself of why it's not safe. And the thing is, it doesn't feel safe. you still have to walk into it because nothing will feel safe. And that I'm really grateful that he gave me that. And it took time. This isn't. I don't know. Maybe we are supposed to talk about this more, like, because I'm having ideas just talking about it. But like, even even within counseling, it wasn't deconstructing. I didn't need to do that with my faith, and my counselor was great in pointing that out. Like, God hasn't changed, and this is actually like the most predictable thing. Like, people will fall and do stuff. But what I did have to do was I had to process stuff. And he had a great analogy of processing. He's like, if you go through an old fridge, which anyone who works in ministry knows that church
The
fridges are the
fridge.
worst.
Yes,
They're
very much
just
so.
the absolute worst because there's stuff that's been in there forever. Like, don't ever trust food. I don't care how good it looks. You should probably throw it away. Um, but he would say you got to process like you would go through a church fridge, take everything out and look at it and be like, where did I get that? Where's that from? Why do I believe that? Not about my faith or theology, but like, why have I been given that practice, or why do I not trust this, or what? And you're processing through it with the Bible and a solid believer, and you're working through that, and you're healing and you're processing and seeing what belongs and stays, and what is like, yeah, actually that needs to go. So
Yeah, that's good. That is a great analogy. I will be using that one in the future for sure. That's good stuff. I appreciate you talking about that. So then this led to sort of
yeah,
yeah, talk about next
yeah,
steps and like
yeah,
how all
dude.
that. Yeah.
Oh man, it was a wild ride. I think at some point in there, I felt uh, pretty good, and like I'm sailing and back to focus in student ministry. Is one of the hardest things in healing and leading is that I didn't feel like I was giving my best to the students.
Hmm.
But what I found, as they were telling me later, is no, actually, we saw you wrestling through stuff and still living out your faith. And that was the most powerful thing that we could have seen that whole time.
Wow.
And so they saw me uh, struggle at points. And by struggle, it wasn't like I'm absent, MIA, but in my messages, I was raw at points.
Yeah.
Anyways, um, so new senior pastor comes on, staff positions kind of fill out. Then they start to take jobs. God leads them elsewhere around the country. And it's me and one other guy left on staff. And tough days at the church, COVID. This is COVID time. And so I'm starting to step up and lead kids men. Um, starting to do more preaching. I'm starting to lead out in staff meetings. My voice, I think, being respected, not that it wasn't before, but I think heard and listened to and followed a little bit more in elder meetings and stuff like that. And and within that, leading to a place where I was seeing, I was just wearing way too many hats. Uh, I was on a missions trip in Florida, and normally the last day of a missions trip, I love to take a little walk and be like, dude, God, you're awesome. This was great. And sort of reflect on the week. But I took that walk and I felt dead. I was so gassed. Um, I remember going to the bathroom and just breaking down, and I was just crying, and I wasn't sure why. So I grabbed my uncle who's a pastor. I was like, I don't think I'm okay. And so started to think, man, maybe I need to like step back out. What is it? I don't know, man. Like it's been a stretch of, I don't know, 5 or 6 years that have just been pretty intense here. And what came from that was flight back to Chicago, landed, and my phone had a ton of text messages on it, and it was all the elders, and they were talking about something. And I remember one of the texts was like, hey, let's wait. Mark's in the air right now. Let's see what he says when he lands. And I'm like with the students. I'm tired from the trip. I had gotten COVID on the trip, so I'm physically, I was, it was bad. Kind of from that, my wife and I were talking, and we're like, we can't keep doing this. And so I met with the elders. I called a meeting, like kind of not an emergency meeting, but kind of, and was like, I got 6 months before I'm totally burned out. And this church cannot have that. and that would be a really bad spot for us. So here's what we got to do. We got to clarify roles, and we got to either put me in as the interim senior pastor and let me lead out in that way, and then the guy who is interning under me, make him youth pastor, or we need to like figure something else out. And so everyone prayed about it, went away for a week, and I don't know if this is too long of the version, but you're getting
I
it.
love it. I love the story.
Oh man. So I still remember, man, we're in Nordstrom Cafe, my wife and I, and we're talking about, we've been praying about it separately. Now we're coming together. What does God want us to do? Now, Curry, you know me, man. I'm student ministry all the way. I love student ministry. That's what I want to do. And all this other stuff that I'm leading out on. I was leading worship too at the time. Kids, men,
Golly.
preaching.
Jeez.
Um, it wasn't good, right? And so we sit down to talk about what we're gonna do, and she's crying, I'm crying because God's leading both of us to step into interim senior pastor, and she's really strong on it, like she knows, which I trust that, and I know what God's been showing me. So we're both crying. We realized that they stopped seating people around us. I'm pretty sure they thought we were breaking up. It was such an emotional dinner, dude. We're both bawling and we're just in our own world. And then like at some point we come out of it and I look around and I'm like, dude, they literally have left these seats and tables open around us. So we go back
That
to
was
the
kind. That
elders.
was very kind of
Yeah,
them, you know.
it was good. Go back to the elders and say, hey, we think God has led us this way. And they were like, interesting. We don't think that. Okay. So now we start to have this conversation.
Hmm.
And, I respect these guys, trust these guys. And so we have this dialogue and looking at it in this meeting. And within it, it kind of was like, all right, maybe this is actually our really only option is Mark stepping in, which, for me, just truthfully, man, I don't want to step into this.
Right.
And I'm scared. And they've said, I don't know if Mark can. It's kind of like, well, don't we feel great about this? I'm telling you, man, super cliche thing, but it's totally true. God strengthened me and rose me up in a way in that time that I've never experienced since then or before then. I think I was a better leader back then than I am now. You know what I'm saying? Like there was something special that God was doing.
Um,
Um, and so I stepped into that role and just called the church meeting and was like, hey, I'm only going to tell you the truth. Here's the things that we're not doing well. Here's the things that are really unhealthy. Here's the things we have to change. And as I'm leading in that role, it starts to hit Sarah and I. We probably can't stay here because she's on a search team to bring in a senior pastor. So people start to say in the church, like, hey, we like when you preach. Maybe you should stay here. And I'm like, it's so much more than preaching. This job is not just about preaching.
right.
Maybe you should stay. And so God showed us, and we reached out to some godly people outside the church. And they're like, yeah, man, if you're leading the church like that, you've been leading towards a healthier church all these years. You got to step out.
Hmm.
And so I met with the elders and I said, hey, right when they got a guy that was going to be the candidate to be the next pastor, I said, I got to tell you, we're going to bring this guy in and I'm going to hand the baton and I got to go. I got to let this guy lead. Guys, this is what we've been working for years. We got to let this guy do his thing. And so what that meant was me finishing my time telling the church, explaining it, but really, Curry, leaving these people that had been family that I grew up with, the only church that I ever knew, that we had also gone through hell together. And some of the people that we've fought and we've had to work through it, or we're still like, gosh, why do you think that? And I think this, and we're working through it. But there's this depth that is there and a comfort that is there. And so I left and I had no idea what was next. And I knew I wasn't okay. Gave myself 2 months as like a sabbatical. And and checked my email the day after that, and I got this email from this guy named Scott Ziegler, pastor in the area, and he's like, "Hey, let's meet. Would love to talk." And from there, he's describing to me this job position. Well, we just went out, then I started to meet with this other guy. But I was simultaneously teaching at Moody as an adjunct prof, and they opened up a position full time there, and they asked me to apply, and I was like, "This is what God wants.
Yeah,
It's totally what God wants." And I found out that I didn't get that job the day I met with the executive pastor of this church that I'm at now. And he described this job. He's like, "Yeah, we'd love for you to come in and like work with we have youth pastors at 4 locations and pour into them, develop them, kind of college ministry, all these things I love, right?" But I was so blinded by what I wanted at Moody. Um, I'm like telling my wife I didn't get the Moody job, and I don't know what to do. We have no idea what's next. She's like, "Tell me more about that other job." And I'm like describing it. She's like, "What are you doing? That's you."
yeah,
Like everything that he's just saying. And so um, went back out with them, and I've been here. That's a long version, man, but I'm here and just feel so blessed. Just the way God works it, man. I have leadership above me that I respect 10 out of 10, who's also pouring into me and developing me in such beautiful ways.
yeah.
And then I have these younger guys that I'm pouring into in much of the way that I wish that I was receiving at points in my life. And so there's so much about it that I'm able just to be like, wow, God, your plan was really good. Not how I drew up that play at all. But look at what he did.
Mm. That's awesome, man. I love that. I haven't gotten this part of the story actually. So it's kind of cool to hear it in real time. And yeah, I love that. It's awesome. It's good stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Thankful, man. I'm so, yeah, super thankful. And I think it's uh, one more quick thing. Just recently started stepping into a campus pastor role here, which I never would have seen, right? Senior pastor. I was like, no, not that. But it's just very interesting how God uh, does stir our desires, kind of as we were talking about earlier, and seeing that while I still have a heart for students so much, it's really people and it's discipleship and it's God and it's his kingdom and what he's doing and all this stuff. And so yeah, I've been doing that and loving that too. And so yeah, it's just wild how he works in those ways. Show me this 15 years ago and I'd be like, "Oh man, like I had to leave my home church." But, there's so much that God has done.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's just encouraging just in general, right? Like we just have no idea these stories that God has mapped out for us and like what we think would be the ideal situation never is, rarely ever, maybe never. I don't know. Like uh, we have our like infinitesimally small plans compared to his infinite plans. And I think that's just really heartening, like in whatever work we're kind of doing.
That's right, man. That's why I think so much of it is a step at a time. We keep telling our students like, what do you want to be and where do you want to go and what scholarship and all these things. That's fine to have those conversations and dream, and God put desires on my heart when I was 17 that turned out to play a major factor in my life. But I think what would do our students even better, and is to teach them how to be faithful in the season you're in right now. There's actually a lot of seasons I wish I wasn't in before, and that I would have done anything to feel like I could get out of that season. But I knew that what it meant to be faithful was to do that step, and that leads to the next one, which leads to the next one. And sometimes the next one was harder and the next one was harder, but it was going somewhere.
Yeah.
And while right now I love where I'm at, tomorrow I could wake up and there could be something very difficult. But I know the God who brought me through those other steps. And I know where he led me. And I know that I can trust him for tomorrow.
Amen. That's good stuff. That's a good word. And talking about steps, that's a perfect transition into one of your new ventures, which is part of the reason we
Oh my gosh,
had you
yeah.
on,
Yeah,
is a
totally.
forthcoming book, right? So can you talk to us a little bit
Yeah,
about that?
another thing I never would have seen coming. I was having
Yeah.
my dad's an author, and so that's always been like his thing.
Yeah.
And so him and I were out and we were talking about a book that he had been approached about writing, and we're going back and forth. And I'm like, yeah, but what about this or not this and that? And at the end of the conversation, he's like, do you want to write it with me? I was like, I don't know about, I don't know about that. But I was like, oh, yeah, let's do it. It was like one of the hardest things, man. However, whatever I thought about writing books before, the number of times I was sitting down at my laptop and I was like, imposter syndrome and all the doubts and frustration and stuff like that. But it's actually part of why I believe in this book that much more. The whole book is on conversations. How about this for some product
Oh, look at
placement?
you. Yeah, product
Yeah.
placement.
It's called What to Say and How to Say It to Your Teen. And it's all about conversations and how to have those conversations with your students. I saw a difference in the families that would sit down and try to have the conversations about the hard things. Even if it was like a 3 out of 10 conversation and they come to me and they're so discouraged, like, well, that was kind of horrible. And I still think it mattered more as long as you weren't like destructive in it.
Yeah.
If you were trying and genuine, good things are happening. But the number of times I sat at my laptop, no idea, well, how would I have this conversation? As much as I had to think about that, I'm like, well, in parenting, we got 1,000 things on our mind, and we're trying to get to the next thing. And there's all these things, trying to think intentionally about how to have a conversation. I'm probably not going to be that strategic. So we try to keep each of the sections short, concise, right to it. But to give you a little bit of a roadmap of here's some of the goals, here's what you're trying to do with this conversation.
Yeah, that's good. Something people don't understand about youth ministry, especially long time in youth ministry with the same church, is that you get a like cheat sheet into seeing how other people do this parenting thing. And a lot of it's how not to, honestly. You see the good and the bad and the ugly and everything in between, right? So, you approach these conversations, you've seen hundreds, maybe thousands of teens go from middle school through high school, right? I mean, it's just it's a pretty cool training ground for all of that.
Yeah, that's right on, man. And especially early in my years, it's very limited what you see in
Yeah.
it, and then you see the second or third sibling. You're invited more into the family as you get older. They trust you more. Parents open up more, and they're like, "Dude, I think I'm blowing it. Like, I don't think I'm doing this right, or
Yeah.
whatever." And a lot of times, what I would tell parents is like, first, what I want you to know is not every parent is having this conversation. So, like, seriously, respect to you. Like, you should feel encouraged that at least you're venturing into it. Now, let's talk about maybe how you could have a better follow up conversation or whatever. So, yeah, and the students that are having these conversations, um, they were better off for it, um, in a lot of ways. But one of the biggest ones is it was opening lines of communication between them and their parents, even if they didn't think that they needed that conversation. 6 months later, when they're going through something and they're like, "Well, that's who I'm going to go talk to about it." I already talk about stuff like this with my parents. It opens it up for way more than the 30 conversations that we're talking about in this book.
Yeah. Yeah. The structure of the book's really cool because it kind of sets the stage in the first part of it, but then there's actual literal like you walk through actual questions or things that people might be going through. So can you just unpack a little bit, I guess, of the top? What are the top things you see as, cheat sheets or things that we can do correctly in sort of approaching conversations with our teens just in general?
Yeah, a few things we talk about is really thinking through the setting of the conversation. We would do this with students, right? If it was an office conversation, or is this like a Starbucks conversation? And I recommend never Starbucks. Like, go to a better coffee shop, but whatever. Sorry to like throw that out there.
Wow. Catching strays.
Dude, this guy.
Starbucks.
That's. uh, but like, so we talk about setting, and some of it is that shoulder to shoulder conversation, really encouraging that. Sometimes it's at night as they're going to bed. Are you rushed in that time, or have you allowed space for a conversation that could happen? So trying to be strategic with that, even as basic as it seems, to pray about it beforehand. We talk about that. The prayer does something to get our heart thinking about the right goal.
Mm.
We're not just trying to unload on them and like, I'm so frustrated that my kid isn't doing this. So as we're praying about it, it helps if we're frustrated or angry, it helps us move closer to compassion and immersed in the love that I think we need to carry out in that. So another thing we talk about is follow-ups. Every section is like, all right, now you had the talk. Now let's talk about the follow-up conversation. And really not trying to leave any conversation just as a one-time thing. But this is something you're going to come back to.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I think you point out something so particular there. It's just the distraction. Like, we are distracted people. And as adults, I feel like we don't realize how distracted we are. And we're having so many of these conversations just like without actually having thought through them. Teens catch us distracted sometimes, right? I mean, it's just that there's just a basic intentionality that's just this sort of like starting point that people don't even think about, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, every parent has been guilty of the multitask conversation, distracted while we're on our phone, checking our fantasy lineup to make sure everyone's in the right spot before the games start, like I was last weekend. But within that, building some great habits within it. Actually, one of the sections we talk about is screen time. And the first thing that we say is like, if you've disqualified yourself from this conversation because of your own screen time habits, that's actually where you have to start. Is you have to think through what you're doing differently, and now that's actually what's going to open the door into your conversation to be like, hey, I've been thinking about my own screen time and it's really not a good spot. Here's what I'm doing. And now you start to shift into them there too. But um, yeah, that's some of what helps if you're having a conversation over a meal. We talk about that. Your hands are doing something else. You're there's distractions, but they're that work into the conversation. If I'm just having a conversation, it's too intense. I'm kind of looking for something else. So that's where like bonfire is great, or a walk, a drive. There's other things around, but you can still be locked in. But I don't think it's bad. I think it's actually good to put out some things and be like, hey, we're going to put our phone away for this. I'm showing you right now, like I'm on do not disturb. This conversation really matters. I'm putting this away, not just on the table in front of you, face down or up, but like really not, because this matters. We got to work hard for that. Distractions are everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I'm now have a 15 and a 13-year-old, which is kind of crazy. So I'm like reading through the book, and like we just had the staying the night at somebody's house conversation, like literally this past weekend, and it did not go well. So I flipped directly to that chapter. Nice. I was like, okay, we did some things pretty good in that, but I think we don't even think about it till it comes up a lot of times. I mean, that's why, this isn't stuff that you can just like be prepared for everything. And like, I don't even think a lot of times, in my experience, that how they're going to react to some things, like sometimes it's not that big a deal. Like with us, social media hasn't been that big of a deal. They haven't freaked out about not allowing them on social media, but other things have been huge deals, and it just kind of blindsides you. And you're like, oh geez, now I got to kind of rethink through all of this stuff.
Yeah, I love that you came to this section and you're like, oh, I think we did okay with that. Like, I would love if people came back, because how often are parents walking around beating themselves up, feeling like, man, I did. So even if there's nothing new in that section, you read it and you're like, oh, someone else thought that too, and that's helpful. Or there's going to be stuff you disagree and like, oh, I would do it different. That's fine too. But, or hopefully there's the stuff that is helpful too. Because right in that moment, it's so hard to be ready and be like, okay, it was sleepovers that became the hostile territory for us today. But that's where some parents lean away from the conversations because they're like, dude, which we do. We have to pick and choose our battles here. But sometimes we get into a bad spot if we just don't want to rock the boat at all. And we're like, man, I just want things to be good and cool and fine. We're just avoiding the conversation. At some point, it's going to come up. So, to try to lean into that.
Yeah, that's good. Something I thought about, Mark, I wanted to pick your brain on a little bit just in reading the book. I really enjoyed it, but I kept thinking I kept thinking as I read it. Do you feel like just being a teen is just very different in our like society. Like, has something changed where it's harder to kind of be a teen slash parent teens, or is this just sort of, I don't know. I don't know. How has it always been, or something a little bit different these days?
That's a great question. And something I've thought a lot about. I think, let's start positive first. I think the currency and what reaches and matters to students has not changed. They want adults and people that care about them and love them and invest in them. Like, whether that's a youth leader, I see our youth pastors here spending time with teenagers in much the same way that you and I did.
Yeah.
And that currency is still valuable, where they're still like, this matters. Now, some of the methods change. I remember during COVID calling students and they're like, hello? Like, why are we talking on the phone?
I didn't know this thing rang. I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
Like, why are we talking on the phone right now? So, like, obviously texting, and there's so much you could do that is great in that.
Yeah.
But I do think some things are different, positive and negative. I do think screens are changing the way that they're thinking, attention spans, which changes how we think about our messages and how visual we are and how long we can actually teach, all that stuff. And I'm not here saying like only 10-minute messages but I am saying some of that I'm watching that be different and change in some of their life. And so, yeah, I do think some of that, but I think teenagers have always lacked discipline. I think their outlets are just a little bit different now, but there's totally more access to things that can just continue to feed that desire. Same with access to pornography and that has wildly changed.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started student ministry, 2011, doing a series on like sexuality and dating and all that stuff, and the stuff that they were saying then versus like more towards the end of my time. And it's like the number of students that had sent or received pictures from people wildly high. So stuff like that is different, which starts to, change some of what we have to talk about and when we talk about it and how early we're talking about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I have very similar feels, but I also don't want to be like the kids these days sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like every generation has done that to the younger generation and just like, writing them off for like, this and that. And like, I feel like we do that to these Gen Alpha, these younger up and coming kids. And I just I don't want that to be it, but I want to go in like understanding kind of their world in some different ways, and I think it's actually really cool that you and your dad did this together because you have these generational. So I could even see this being like beneficial for grandparents who, are trying to figure out their teen grandchildren and that sort of thing. So
that's right on, man. And that's where I always tell the guys here, the youth pastors here, to be students of our students. We always have to be learning because there is a spectrum. You will have some that are on screens, social media, rough spots, all that stuff, and then some that might not. But to be students of the students and really knowing where they're at to best know how to reach them. I did remember though when you were saying like I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, teens these days. I've wrestled with that so much, man. Where I'm like, dude, I don't want. But there will be times that I'm talking to them that like socially. Oh, dude, I have a few things to say. Sorry.
It's good. Do it. I love it.
What we found funny with 2012, 2015, 2016, 17 teenagers was like the shows that we watched and the movies that we watched. And now there's like trends that sweep through for a summer.
Like that.
Yeah.
With wildfire.
I always say like, you can watch the arc. If it goes up, it's dead in teenagers. Or like my 3-year-old is walking around, my 3-year-old, 6'7".
Oh my
6'7".
gosh.
And I'm like, it's dead. It's totally dead.
Yeah.
If it's down to the 3-year-old, it's gone. It's dead.
It's not cool anymore.
So some of that stuff relating, but that's where I'm always like, stop trying. Don't try to like relate on the trends like that and be like relevant and all that stuff, whatever. Like the currency is the same. Do you care about them?
Mm.
Will you invest in their life? Will you spend time with them? Will you care and listen as they're talking? But here's another thing that I do think is different, that is the positive. I do think that there is a different hunger, interest, openness to faith in general.
Mm.
And I think it's catching on the heels of some of the tolerance movement that has actually swung back maybe in our favor. I haven't really talked about this that much, so it's half-baked ideas, but our culture is very like not one truth and open to things. I think we're catching a wave of people that, because there's this interest, openness, I'll hear you out. They've seen a lot of things that haven't been right. And there is an openness to be like, well, tell me what you think.
Mm-hmm.
We just had a high schooler show up to church last month because he got a flyer in the mail about our church, and he brought two friends. Never came to church, just brought. And I'm like, that didn't happen 15 years ago.
For
And then
sure.
he invited friends who brought their sibling, who all showed up, who brought their family. And I'm like, what's happening? I do think that there's a hunger and a genuine openness that feels very exciting to me. And I'm really not one of those people that's talking about revival and all that. Praise God if it happens, right? And I hope and I pray and I lead towards wanting to see that in our country. But I'm at conversations, I'm like, man, I do think that there's a different hunger and openness and desire that I think if I share I really believe this, man. If I share the gospel with anyone, they're not like, forget you, dude. Like, get out. They're not pissed at me.
Yeah.
I think that they'll listen. And I think that we can have a conversation about it.
Yeah. And not in a way that's like all truth, just that everything could be true, right? Like in a way where they're like, I mean, I feel like people are seeking a different level of truth than they were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I think people,
and I'm in Chicago, dude.
Yeah, right.
Like I'm in Chicago where I'm going to generalize for a second. Like I think probably where you're at, it's a little bit more open, more culturally people are Christians.
Yeah, for sure.
But here it's not like that.
Yeah.
But people are like, it's not a strike against you anymore if you go to church.
Yeah.
I used to feel like that with my students where they're like kind of hiding it. That they're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, I go to church. Yeah, this is what. Oh, cool. Tell me. There's an openness to it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're fine. I think the pendulum swings a lot more than we think. And I've seen this, and I mean, in our years of youth ministry, we've seen pendulum swings pretty significantly. And I feel like people get in this mode of like, oh, the church is headed down, down, down. And like, there's always a reaction to all this stuff. And so we just got to be present and ready for whatever, people want.
Those stories ring out the loudest of like the stats of people walking away and all that stuff. I'm part of a church right now that I see growing, a college group that is growing, student ministries that are growing, that they're bringing their friends out to. People are getting saved and baptized. We just baptized a high school student here a couple of weeks ago and it's not uncommon to be seeing that I'm paying attention to that in a little bit of a different way. And it's not just us. And so I think it's good for us to talk about that. It's good for us to lean into that. And to pick up that narrative wherever you might be serving around the country, that I don't think it's just Chicago. I think we're seeing that broader.
Yeah, I love that. I love a little hope. I think there's some hope there. You know what I mean? To our culture, and that's good stuff. Anything else on the book that I didn't ask about or didn't talk about that you feel like we need to hit?
No, man. I think you hit it great. A couple people in mind as we're writing it. Of course, it's the parents. But I'm also thinking about the young youth pastors who are 23, 24, 25, that you might not find parents initiating and being like, hey, you with no kids and, not married, give me parenting advice. Like you probably might not get that as a 22, 23, 24-year-old youth pastor. But what you can give is resources. And so that's something I would encourage you, younger people in ministry. If you're not having parents ask for advice, you can give resources. And I think that this book leans towards that way. And there's so many other great books too. to look at. So yeah, it's thought of from that. I even think youth pastors thinking about how they address some of these things in their messages. There's a section in each. There's a part in each section of every conversation of why this matters, and that's basically the biblical, theological, cultural moment, trying to capture some of why biblically we're thinking about this and needing to talk about it here right now in the world that we live in. So I even think it could be helpful for people trying to craft messages too.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think it's a great resource. Mark's dancing around it, but I'm just going to tell you, just go pick up the book. It's wonderful. So it's a great resource. Youth ministry. If you're in any sort of ministry, this is a great resource for pastors and parents and grandparents, I think, honestly. So it's good stuff, man. Thanks for the work. Are you ready to jump into the final two questions as we wrap up here?
Yeah, man. Let's do it.
All right. So my first question is, what is the strangest job that you have ever had?
Strangest job I ever had was handing out flyers on Michigan Avenue for a furniture company. And they paid me cash. It was while I was at Moody. The number of people that got so mad at me, man. It was such a great side hustle because, man, cash in college speaks, man. But, dude, that was a weird job. I had to like pick myself up off the sidewalk afterwards. I'm like, dude, so many people just like ignore you, reject you, are mad at you. No one's like walking down Michigan Avenue like, I'm so glad that you're telling me about a furniture place that's 6 blocks away from here.
Yeah.
That was weird.
That is weird. I mean, did you ever do like street evangelism on Michigan Avenue, like with Moody or anything like that? I mean, I feel like just Michigan Avenue is its own like world almost.
You know? It is. There's things happening all over the place. I didn't do it on Michigan Avenue. I did it on Chicago Avenue.
Chicago, okay.
Which is also a different world.
It is a very different world. You were right. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. It's good stuff. Okay, so my final question then is, what is one piece of advice you would give to somebody looking to bring God's kingdom more into their work?
It sounds really cliche, but I would say to take your body of work, the full thing of it, as something that you're stewarding and that you are protecting and caring and faithfully delivering to the world as an ambassador of Christ. And so you're representing in all the small things. And I think that helps. It helped me get through some of those really difficult steps, is to think about the whole thing as something I was carrying and delivering to faithfully get it somewhere for God and for some of the people around me that were depending on me in those days.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think we could think a lot more about that sort of thing as we do our work. And so, Mark, thanks so much for hanging out with me, man. This was super fun.
Dude, it was so good talking to you. Man. Appreciate you and your friendship and everything that you're doing. This was fun, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Thanks so much for hanging out and listening to A Theology of Hustle. Make sure that you like and subscribe, all the things, and follow me at Theology of Hustle on Instagram. My hope is that this podcast just encourages you in your work, whatever that may be. So until next time, get out there and hustle.